Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Thursday, the 5th of October. It is game day. Rangers preparing to take on Aris Limassol in the Europa League, the second group stage match. And Chris is over in Limassol for us. Looks like a nice little background there. Is that a balcony you've got in your room, Chris?
Balcony overlooking the pool.
Fantastic.
The Rangers Review are certainly good to us. So no, it's my smashing spot. There's not much in Limassol itself. I've not actually ventured too far. I was always up at the stadium last night for the press conference, and I'll leave here about 5:30 or so tonight. Get there nice and sharp, soak up the big match atmosphere, and see if they put some water on that pitch, because as we said last night, it didn't look the best. It's baking hot once again this morning, so hopefully the groundsman's out of the sprinklers later on.
Yeah, it looked super dry, the pictures that you posted earlier. It was, let's hope that is the case. Before we talk all things Rangers, folks, you can see a little ticker below. We've got two fantastic offers on the website just now. You can subscribe for just £4 for 4 months, or you can take out a yearly subscription, which is just £18. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe to sign up. Lots to get your teeth stuck into on the site, and a fair few people are signing up as well, so thank you very much for doing so. Right, of course, Stephen Davis spoke to the press yesterday. You can go and check back on, I spoke to Chris last night after he gave his first press conference as interim boss. James Tavernier was also put up for the press as well, folks. So that is on our YouTube channel, and you can read the transcript over on the website as well. Before we talk about the game, Chris, Rangers are looking for a new manager. The talk was yesterday that Kevin Muscat was set for a Zoom call with Rangers regarding the vacancy. We're hearing reports that Frank Lampard has emerged as a favourite with some bookmakers, and rumours that he too is in the frame. And we heard that Pascal Janssen, the AZ Alkmaar boss, coming out yesterday, was asked about the position, and he commented on it. I'll read you what he said, folks. There's a few little versions of this that may be lost in translation, but he says that I don't know if there has been contact with AZ, but there has been no contact with me. I also received some messages from England, but I don't know where it came from. It's completely out of the question. So make of that what you will. Any update on yesterday with regards to the managerial hunt, Chris?
Nothing substantial, unfortunately. There was a suggestion last night that James Bisgrove had a meeting with Frank Lampard, also to discuss the job. That's not been confirmed by anyone at the club as of yet. So still trying to get to the bottom of that one. So as we spoke about yesterday with Josh, the shortlist has been doing the rounds the last couple of days. I think everyone has got their particular favourite on that one. I think everyone has ruled a couple out of that particular quartet as well. So
yeah,
there's no movement. The only word from the club last night was they're happy to take their time on it as per usual, not expecting anything before the weekend. It will be Steve Davis and Alec Ray in the dugout for these two games. If we're still sitting here this time next week and there's not a manager, then maybe not start to worry. But I think I'd be surprised if there's not something a bit more concrete by then. But no, the club remaining very, very tight-lipped.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in with regards to it. Paul McGarrigle with a point. No manager is going to say anything in his club press conference. Yeah, he's not going to come out and say, I want the job. So I get that, Paul. And Jamie Geddes says, Big Sam's in Cyprus. Yeah, maybe on holiday, I'd imagine. But yeah, I've seen him on the podcast. We did mention that. On our post-match reaction, a press conference reaction video, he was asked about it in a podcast, and he was talking about the Rangers' position. And Big Kendall with a point here, he says Lampard would not be a popular choice. I've not really seen. I'm struggling to. I've not had anyone say they want Frank Lampard, Chris. That sort of tells you everything you need to know.
It's quite as I said yesterday, the reaction has been don't think it's been overly surprising, but it's certainly been a broad spectrum of opinions on who the manager should be. As we've discussed, there's not one single outstanding candidate. There's not one that the fans are saying to the board, go and get him and we'll be happy. But there seems to be a consensus is if you go and get Frank Lampard, we'll not be happy. And Ross spoke about Frank before in terms of his record and whether he's actually equipped and whether he's actually qualified to be Rangers manager. Personally, I don't think he is. I don't think he's of the four. I don't think he's the best candidate at present. But he's certainly someone. There's also a bit of momentum behind him at the bookies. But anyone who's getting too caught up in the bookies' odds at present, they're backing up with all three. Now these lists come out as soon as Michael Beale was sacked on Sunday night. The lists were out within 10-15 minutes. Some of the usual suspects, some completely silly ones, as always. The markets on these things, they're so volatile, they can change. You could walk down to your local bookies, stick 50 quid on someone, and suddenly they're favourite to be in your Rangers manager. So if people are getting overly excited because their preferred candidate is shortening in the odds, or they're getting a bit worried because a certain candidate is the favourite, I would say just calm down, give the club time to work through their process. They'll appoint who they feel is the best man. Ultimately, the fans will have their opinion on whether that decision is the right one. But don't get too caught up in some of the names that are doing the rounds, some of the speculation. Now, there's obviously agents at play putting people forward, other managers putting themselves forward, other managers might be using it as a bit of leverage to get a better deal at the club or to may try and get a move elsewhere. So when a club the size of Rangers is looking for a manager, there's so many different aspects then come into it. It's not just a case of Rangers pick a name and they go and get them. There's a lot of movers and shakers behind the scenes that are trying to use the situation for their own gain. So hopefully people aren't getting too caught up and too worried. Rangers will get a manager. They'll have a manager within the next fortnight. And then once he's in place, then we can discuss whether it's the right one or not.
Yeah. Speaking about what Chris just said, Michael O'Neill has endorsed Stephen Davis's management credentials ahead of his interim stint. Of course, he said, I think it shows you the nature of football at this moment in time. It's great for Stephen and shows the high regard he is held in at the club. They have turned to him in this situation after making the decision on their manager, Michael Beale, and I have messaged him to wish him all the best. I told him if he needed any help or guidance, not to be afraid to pick up the phone, but he will have his own thoughts and hasn't had much time with the players, particularly with the travel involved going to Cyprus. He also added, it's never an easy situation, and playing in Europe away from home adds to all. He has huge experience as a player, and he has a lot of common sense. He's emotionally well balanced, which is important, and that will help him in this situation. He was also, as he continued, said, when you have Stephen's background, you have the respect of the players, which is important. That won't last long. It will have a shelf life, and you'll be judged on how he is as manager. Players change when you leave them out of the team. Relationships change, and Stephen will have to deal with that. He is balanced, never gets too high or low, takes a common sense approach, and is not over emotional, but has a steely determination. And you see that in his career in recovery from injury at the age of 38. He has played under top managers and was part of successful Rangers teams. He'll have taken a lot from his time under Walter and has a wealth of experience, which will hopefully transfer to help him in the role. You spoke to him yesterday, Chris. Stephen Davis. Sort of echo a lot with what Michael O'Neill says there. Speaks a lot of sense. Big opportunity for him. There is a steely determination in him, isn't there? He doesn't reach this age playing professional football at the level he's played at without that. Let's hope that can transfer into being a manager. But it's a different ball game, as Michael Beale has found out. Even just being a coach to a manager, transitioning Stephen Davis from being a player to a manager is altogether different.
It's not going to be an easy task for him, but he's got a good team around with him here. Obviously, Aris come in, Colin Stewart's remained, and Brian Gilmore and Stevie Smith have stepped up from the academy. There's not huge amounts of managerial dugout time amongst them, Alec Ray aside, but I think in the circumstances, given the short time frame that Rangers have had to work in here, it was a good as a good appointment. Stephen kind of went through the process yesterday. He was actually out in Rome watching the European Ryder Cup team over the weekend. Sunday night, just sitting in the house, phone goes, it's James Bisgrove and Craig Robertson. Next thing you know, he's now the Rangers manager. It just shows you how quickly life can change, how quickly football can change. I think it's something I'm sure he's had in his mind, certainly during the last 10, 11 months during his injury rehab. He spoke a bit about that yesterday as well, how he's it's not been the easiest process, but he feels that his knee's getting better and he is getting there. I think we'd all love to see Steve Davis, at the very least, make one final appearance for Rangers if possible, just to get a proper send-off, because there's very few figures over the last 10 years or so that deserve that type of send-off as much as Steve Davis, and certainly akin to the one that Alan McGregor got at the end of last season as well. So if nothing else, I'd like to see Davo at least get one more game. I think we would all like to see Steve Davis as Rangers manager one day, long term, but only if he can earn it. You don't get the jobs just because you've been a great player. You have to, at a club like Rangers, you have to earn it. This is a chance for him to show what he's all about. It's a chance for him to go in and try and put a bit of confidence back in the team. Maybe try a couple of things tactically to get Rangers performing at a higher level than they have been. I don't think it'll be enough, even if he was to win 3-0 tonight and go to Paisley and win 3-0 on Sunday. I don't think that's going to be enough to get him the job. I don't think it should be enough. Going forward, if he can continue playing, great. If he can't, I think there should be a coaching role at Auchenhowie somewhere for him, and hopefully over the next couple of years, maybe even not next time, but time after that, I'd like to see Steve Davis as Rangers manager, if that's the route that he wants to go down, and that's the route that he proves he is as adept at, as we all think he will be. Now, the number of people that have spoken so highly about him in the last couple of days speaks volumes of him as a player, as a person, as a professional. The Rangers are in safe hands on an interim basis with Steve Davis. Ultimately, they have to go and appoint a manager to take the club forward, but I would hope that the new setup does find a place for Steve Davis along the line somewhere, if that's the route they would like to go down.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I would like to see him remain at Ibrox in a coaching capacity. Blue Nose John says Stephen Davis must remain at the club whatever happens. He is real Rangers royalty. And some interesting takes on Davis. We Scottish guy says if Davis does well, do we give it to him more of a rookie than Beale? He says, and just on that transition from player to manager, Ian McPhee with the point here, player transition to manager doesn't work. Ask John Gregg. That didn't work. But yeah, listen, we wish Stephen Davis, Alex Ray, Stephen Smith and Brian Gilmore all the very best. Colin Stewart as well, part of the coaching team. All the very best during this interim period. Dave Fulton with a point here. He says, I'd be happy to wait until Christmas to make the right appointment. Do you think... I'm not entirely sure that the fan base would accept that, Chris. I think this international break comes at the right time for Rangers in terms of this search and trying to make the right appointment. Can you foresee an appointment being made around about the international break time? And do you think that the fans would be happy to wait until Christmas to make the right appointment?
I would be surprised if that if that position, if it was widely shared, also Dave's put it forward there, if there's more people like him that are willing to wait, I think that would wear off quite quickly. I think we'd get a couple of weeks down the line, and the first tricky spell now, Alec and Steve Davis go and win 4 games on the spin, and it'd be great. As soon as they lose one or drop a couple of points somewhere, it'll be they're not a proper management team. Why have we not got a manager? Having the interim in the building long term doesn't work. We've actually seen that ourselves in recent years. I think Rangers have to go and get a manager. As you said, Eric, the timing of it with international break coming up now, it makes sense to make the change when they did. It's given them this period, giving them this window to go and try and get a proper manager in, to get an experienced manager in, to get a winning manager in. And I would be surprised if by the time Rangers get to Easter Road after international break, if there's not a new man in the dugout.
Yeah. Right, let's get on to tonight's game, because Interesting matchup. I like this comment from Jamie. He says, "I've got no idea what the score will be tonight. Don't know what to expect." Yeah, that's a feeling of many, including myself. I certainly think there's a lot more optimism heading into the game with a change in management than what there would be had Michael Beale been in the dugout, Chris. But in terms of tonight, I know that myself and Joshua have got our predicted teams on the website. I'm just going to fire up my team on here so you can all slag it off. We'll get it up just now and you can have a rumble on this. So this is the team I'm going for. I think Stephen Davis said there'll be a few tweaks in there. So I think it's good news that Kamar Roof and Nico Raskin have travelled. I've gone with Butland in goal, a back four of Tavernier, Goldson, Suter coming in. I just think you might get the nod tonight. Barisic at left back, Lundstrom, Raskin, Cifuentes in midfield, Wright and Sima either side of Kamar Roof. I know people might be scratching their heads at Scott Wright. I just think Rangers have so limited options at this moment in time, Chris, especially in that forward line. That I think Scott Wright is pace. Ditto Abdallah Sima on both flanks. By all accounts, Aris play an expansive game. They leave a lot of spaces in behind. I think that might just be the way to go. Your predicted team, if you were to choose one, would you have any alterations to what I've selected there?
I would imagine Ben Davies starts in place of John Suter. Raskin is an interesting one. I think it depends how fit he is after being out for a couple of weeks. He's obviously here. Stephen spoke about him last night in terms of how him and Kamar Roof are available. If they're both fit and they're both ready to go and they can both get through 60, 65, 70 minutes, I think they're both in the team because they're two obviously very good players, two important parts of the squad. And if they are fit and they can come in and play from the start, I think that gives Rangers a really good chance of going on and winning this game. I think again, as we've said the last couple of days, there's very little that Stephen Davis can actually do in terms of the squad because we're just still short of players, still waiting on Kieran Dell coming back, Cantwell coming back. Danilo's obviously back in training, but he's not going to feature tonight. I know I see some of the comments coming in. There's not a lot of love for Scott Wright.
No.
Well, a lot of people writing off Scott Wright and giving you a hard time for picking him. Yeah. Ultimately, though, it just speaks of the lack of options that Rangers have. Now they've picked up so many injuries in that attacking area. If it's not Scott Wright and you maybe
play Lammers, I think I'm just thinking about pace. Lammers has next to no pace. Do you play Lammers?
I think Lammers are probably getting annoyed. I think he might go for one pacey option and Sima just to give him that out ball. I think Lammers will probably get annoyed. Roof again, as I said, if he's fit and he's good to go, he starts ahead of Cyril Dessers every day of the week. But I think there's a lot riding on how fit people are, and it'll be interesting to see if Steve Davis tries to change too much. I don't think he will. One, because he doesn't have the options, and two, he's just not had a lot of time. Like, he got appointed on Sunday night, reported at Auchenhowie on Monday morning. The squad flew out here on Tuesday, had a press conference yesterday evening, had a training session on the pitch, back to the team hotel, and that's all the pitch time that they've had. He can also still do his analysis work and the video work, and also team meetings going on over the course of the day. But it's not a lot of time on the training ground, so I don't think it'll be too far away from what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. But I think the big thing a lot of the fans will look for tonight is application. They're looking for players that want to be here, that can play for the jersey, that are playing for the team, playing for each other, and they'll want to see a reaction because the supporters are due, they're owed a really good sustained run of performances and results from this side because they've been let down too often over the last few months. So interesting to see how Steve Davis sets the team up. But I think more intriguingly and more insightfully will be just the application levels and just how the side look, not tactically as such, but I say that how do they start, how do they look, how do they celebrate if they get a goal. So I think there's a lot riding on tonight, and we'll be able to tell quite a lot about a lot of the individuals.
Yeah, we usually see a bounce in teams when there is a managerial change, and perhaps we may just see that this evening. But you're right, I'm getting absolutely panned for my Scott Wright inclusion. Prime Time says, this pod has lost the plot. So that's good kind comments from you there, buddy. Gordon Wood says, right, did you have vodka in the cornflakes this morning, Derek? Listen, I'm open to hearing suggestions. I know some of you are saying Sam Lammers will come in. For me, he's not pulled up any trees so far. So a few young lads been mentioned as well. James Quinn with the point. He says, Derek, would you consider putting Lovelace? He means they're in for Wright and swap the front three around with Lovelace through the middle. We've seen him come on, of course, at the weekend. I wouldn't be opposed to that, I've got to say. I think it's pretty damning. We're talking about Zach Lovelace getting an opportunity ahead of Cyril Dessers, but there you go. That's where we are at this moment in time. I think Kamar Roof starts all day long for me. The back four. Listen, it's a toss-up between John Souttar and Ben Davis. I think Ben Davis has generally done pretty well since he's came back in. So it will be interesting to see what tweaks Stephen Davis makes to that team tonight. Like you, Chris, I don't envisage it to be wholesale alterations. I think he's pretty hamstrung in terms of the options that he has at his disposal. David McFarlane with a very kind donation to the channel. Thank you very much, David. Says, what type of football style do you think Davis will play? I hope that Rangers Review have given you a drinks package for your services, Chris. I very much hope you're enjoying it. A Cypriot lager or two last night, Chris. But in terms of the style of football Stephen Davis will play, well, we don't really know, do we? We don't have any evidence of him coaching teams before. I just want to see, I know people talk about the handbrake being let go and what have you, but I just want to see exciting, entertaining football. Anything that is an upgrade on what we've witnessed this season so far.
I don't think it'd be that hard to find an upgrade on what we've seen for most of the season so far, because what we've been served up has not been anywhere near good enough. He gave a wee insight yesterday in terms of, he said he wanted the players to play with more freedom and also try and get a bit of confidence, a bit of kind of feel-good factor back into the squad. Steve Davis may go on to be a fantastic manager for a club, country, down south, wherever. We just don't know. We don't know what his football style is. We don't know what his coaching capabilities are. I think it'll be quite a possession-based game. I don't see Rangers suddenly lumping along and trying to play off a big man, small man up front. I think it'll be quite a possession-based game from Davis. As I said previously, he's just not had the time to really implement any ideas. So I think it'll be a case of trying to improve on what we've seen so far, which, as I say, it shouldn't be that hard. So time will tell. Hopefully, the team look a bit more solid defensively than they were at the weekend, because Aberdeen caused us far too many problems, and way more problems than they should have done. And Stephen spoke yesterday about, obviously, and he mentioned earlier in the week as well about some of the influence that he's had. I also mentioned Walter Smith. You would hope that those type of influences and those type of characters over the years, they will have certainly rubbed off on him. So I think if we can see a team that's solid, that's well organised, that's well drilled, but has that creative freedom, that knows that when you put on that Rangers jersey, there is an expectation to go and entertain, to take the game to teams, to go and win games, certainly against lesser opposition, not to go and win them comfortably. So fingers crossed we can start to see some of that tonight, and I can get back to the hotel and get another one out of the RR drinks package.
Fingers crossed that is the case. Just on tonight's opponents, folks, just to give you a heads up, I spoke to Lianu, who's a Cypriot football expert and podcast. JD watched it. He says that review of the Cypriot League last night was crazy. Went from the weather to referees getting their cars bombed, the head of the federation in court, etc. Yeah, it's pretty wild over there in terms of Cypriot football. The referees, that there was 2 car bombings this season in recent weeks. I believe they went on strike recently as well. So, crazy stuff over there. I urge you all to go and watch it, folks. It's on the YouTube channel, and he gives a great account of what we can expect from Aris Limassol this evening. Don't really know what to expect, Chris, but on paper, I think they're the weakest side in the group. They ran Sparta Prague close in the opening game. At home, they've got some decent results. They thrashed Slovan Bratislava recently, and I think they'll be difficult proposition in that. What was the heat like last night after the press conference? You think that might have a factor on the players as well, perhaps?
No, surprisingly, it was actually okay. It was obviously very warm here during the day. It's a bit overcast just now, but again, the manager was asked about that last night. I said it's not going to be a problem. A number of these players are also used to playing abroad. They've played in conditions and temperatures like this, so I don't think it will have a huge bearing on the outcome of it. It wasn't as hot as I thought it was going to be, and as we said on the video last night, Derek, I thought the stadium itself, a nice modern arena, it looked a good setup apart from the pitch. But the Rangers should be coming here and winning this game. And if they can win the game, as the manager and as James Tavernier said yesterday, it puts them in a strong position in the group. Now that result against Betis a couple of weeks ago, it's the best performance that we've seen from Rangers this season. Certainly the most eye-catching result that we've seen, and it has put them in a really strong position in this group. From here on in, if you do what's expected of you, then you qualify, and that was the target before the ball was kicked. So as long as they don't do anything silly tonight, they should be coming home, hopefully with 3 points up the road, move on to St Mirren, and they've given themselves a really good platform in terms of qualifying from this section.
Yeah. And as Ian Dill says, he says, Rangers just effing win with a bit of style. That's all we ask. Have you seen many Rangers supporters out there on your travels yet, Chris?
Not too many, actually. There's a couple of guys in the hotel. Saw a couple at the airport, but no, so not ventured too far into Limassol itself so far. So I'll maybe head out later on. I think a couple of the snappers are going to go and try and find some of the beers in town later. But I'm sure by the time we get to the stadium later on, they'll have sampled the local lager. They'll certainly be in good spirits. They'll certainly be in good voice, as they always are. As you mentioned yesterday, Derek, Aris don't seem to have that bigger support and that stronger support. So there's every chance that Rangers will certainly make themselves heard in the Alpha Mega Stadium later on.
Yeah, and what have you sampled any local cuisine over there as yet? What's the food like?
Ate in the hotel last night. Nice chicken kebab. We were having a couple of beers, sitting watching the Champions League. I'll let you decide what game we were watching. But we had a good night last night. By the time we got back in from the press conference, I said just a chilled day, a bit of work to do later on, and heading up the game about 5:30 or so. So it's an earlier kick-off. So if the fans back home remember to set your alarms and tune in at the right time, it's not a 7:45 kick-off back home.
Yeah, Mark says, Chris, are you in one of those 18 to 30 hostels? Oh, those were the days. Those were holidays. But no, I don't think he's in. I think no expense spared when we send Chris away on these European trips, Mark. But were you ever on an 18 to 30s holiday, Chris, back in the day?
Back in the day, I'm only just over 30. Make it sound as if that was a long, long time ago. Podcast taking a turn for the worst here, Derek. People are going to start falling out.
It certainly has. But I think I went on one, I'm sure. Can't remember where, but yeah, absolutely class. Anyway, right, score prediction, Chris. How was it ending tonight? Are Rangers coming away with 3 points?
I'll say 3 points and 2 goals. We'll go 2-0 to Rangers.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. I would happily take that. Right, folks, as ever, we'll have all the usual videos prior to kickoff, or the pre-match team news reaction from the ground. Just a reminder, the match kicks off at 5:45 UK time tonight, 7:45 local time. So we'll have the team news reaction. We'll have the post-match reaction video, as we also plenty to come your way on the channel. We hope you can join us for that. Huge thanks to Chris as ever, and we'll speak to you a little later on. Bye for now.